Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and this is the AT&T Access and Inclusion webinar. Workplace diversity is an issue that affects everyone, and we all miss opportunities when our workplaces cannot accommodate people with disabilities. This webinar will explore inclusion through the lens of a company that is on the forefront, AT&T. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for today. Susan Mathrui is Director of Global Public Policy at AT&T Services, Inc. Susan, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Also here is Heather Sadler. Heather is Sales Manager for Mobility Acquisition at AT&T Mobility, and she is also the National President of IDEAL. This is an AT&T Employee Resource Group. Heather, thank you for making the time. We're really looking forward to your presentation today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And also here today is Lee Mabey. Lee is Director of Product Marketing Management at AT&T Mobility, and he's going to talk to us about some specific solutions that are part of AT&T Digital Life. Lee, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Susan to start us off with some information about access and aging demographics.
Any discussion about access and inclusion really needs to begin with an understanding of the magnitude of this population and the impact it has. If you look at the demographics on disability and aging, we know that as people age, they tend to acquire more disabilities. So with an aging market, you have a greater prevalence of disability. May not always be defined as what you think. Somebody might not say, I have a disability. They may say, I have difficulty walking or seeing or hearing. It's very common. Currently today, we have 1 out of 5 people in the U.S. with a disability. 73% of people with disabilities are heads of households. And we also know that as returning veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan often have injuries that result in disabilities. Some are visible, like people in wheelchairs or amputees. Some are not so visible, traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress disorder. But we know that this population is just getting larger and larger. When we look at the disability and aging markets, this has a result on your bottom line. If you can look at your market, you can capture some of what's available out there by people with disabilities. Currently, people with disabilities control over $1 trillion in aggregate income annually. They have over $22 billion in disposable income annually. And 20% of the U.S. families have a person with a disability. When you look at the older market, over the age of 50, people over the age of 50 spend $2.9 trillion in 2009. And 36% of today's leisure travel decisions are made by persons with disabilities or persons who are over the age of 55. Those folks over the age of 55, we tend to categorize as maybe being slower, and we have a lot of myths around it. But it is really an active and growing market. So why would a business address aging? Well, clearly there's some marketing issues. There's a market availability for companies to take advantage of. But there's also the ability to support your citizenship and sustainability efforts in a company. AT&T has a very strong commitment in this field, and we know that when we provide accessibility, it fosters diversity. If you can use our products and services, especially in a field like ours where you're talking about communications, it engages people, allows people to participate and be part of society as a whole. We also know that looking at innovation and technology can enhance creativity in what we develop and design, but often what we're designing for people with disabilities also helps include people who don't identify with disability. They may be working in an unusual environment. They may be in a noisy environment, which makes them functionally like they have a hearing loss. We know that accessibility builds community by including everyone, and we know that an aging workforce is going to require accessible products and services. We know the workforce in America is growing, and we know with the prevalence of, with aging, the prevalence of disability increases. We know that an accessible workplace strengthens our human resources. It allows companies to recruit from an underutilized population base. There's a very high number of people with disabilities today who are not employed. And we know that when people with disabilities are employed, they have better retention and fewer absences. So it's a win-win. In addition to the requirements or the market opportunities, the advantages to your workforce and to inclusion and sustainability, we also know that there's some legal and regulatory requirements that pertain to ICT companies. For example, new rules for federal contractors have gone into effect, and under Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act, we have a 7% goal of employees with disabilities in our workforce. So if you are a federal contractor, per job group, so at different levels in the company and different types of jobs, the goal is to have 7% of your employee base as people with disabilities. And to meet this requirement for Section 503, you also need to have new requirements in place for data collection, record keeping, and administrative processes. So as long as you are looking at this workforce, you are looking at having to accommodate people with disabilities and having opportunities to market products and services that are accessible. And we also know that disability is of increased concern across the board. There's the Americans with Disabilities Act Americans with Disabilities Act Amendments Act, the ADA, which has been updated to include people with disabilities that you might not necessarily think of as a disability traditionally. So people have diabetes or cancer or things that might impact their ability to deal with things in certain functional ways, but also mean that they're able to participate more fully with accessible products and services. We also know the Department of Justice has been looking at the accessibility of websites, particularly with places that have retail establishments that are physical, but we also know that they are considering the requirements for websites that are accessible across the board. And more and more companies that have only a website interface with their customer base are providing more accessibility. We also know with the Communications and Video Accessibility Act that we have more requirements as communication services providers. For example, we have in our company the Corporate Accessibility Technology Office, which we call CATO, and at AT&T, CATO is responsible for looking at our products and services accessibility, so what we can offer can make sure that our company can be more inclusive, and those we market to can as well. So what are the benefits? We have a market, but we also know that our accessible products and services really help innovation. Design for all is not viewed as a constraint, but as a catalyst for innovation. And we know that designing products that are accessible have benefits for people who don't have disabilities or don't identify. And if you just look at the products you have probably in your hand or on your desk today, where you have alerts that vibrate, which is extremely helpful for people who are deaf and also for people in business meetings. Low glare is extraordinarily helpful if you're in a workplace where you're inside a plane where the light is changing, or if you're working outdoors or in a bright lit area, maybe even working on a beach, you know that the low glare is going to help you. So a lot of removing these barriers for people with disabilities who might need these because they can't see well or hear well really helps people without disability as well. Finally, when you're looking at a workforce, it makes more sense to have products and services that are accessible because you can then have a more inclusive workforce. And we know that there's benefits to the company by hiring of people with disabilities. We know that they're valued employees. We know that it increases employee productivity, not just of the people with disabilities, but their colleagues as well. It increases company morale, and people with disabilities have incredibly good attendance rates. So it's a benefit. It's a win-win. We have people who are employed who want to be employed. We have products and services that can make employment fair and equal and We have a population of folks who can benefit overall in the workplace and in society. So it's kind of a win-win. So we support accessibility inclusion for a lot of reasons. We know that there's consumer markets that are aging. We know that government and enterprise markets require accessibility, and they also have an aging workforce. We know that when we look at inclusion, we look at accessibility, it helps us to think outside the box, and that leads to more innovative solutions, not just for people with disabilities, but people who are customers across the board who may be working in a variety of circumstances or situations. We know the inclusion of people with disabilities increases brand value, and there's been a fair amount of research that on this topic, and you see it being more marketed today. If you look at different ads from different companies, not just those in telecommunications, but across the board, you have models with disabilities, people on cruise ship commercials and wheelchairs. You have just a range of opportunities are out there that can not only provide some opportunities for you to show what you're doing to make your products and services accessible, but also increases your brand value. And finally, providing inclusive and accessible products and images, it leads to loyalty. Family, friends, employees, employers, we all know people with disabilities. We all know that it's the right thing to do to provide access, to make sure that people with disabilities are part of the team and part of our workforce. And we have a great opportunity to do this today with the technology we have. And I know Heather's going to tell you a little bit more about our employees at AT&T and what we've done with Ideal. So Heather, why don't you go forth and talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So yes, I am a longtime employee of AT&T Mobility and currently the national president of Ideal Disability Advocates, which is one of AT&T's employee resource groups. So largely, Ideal's mission is to be a resource group for people interested in the employment and issues of people faced by people with disabilities, And what's important to note is that you don't need to be disabled to join our particular employee resource group. And in many instances, we're also a caregiver organization where we really try to enhance the employment and the benefits and the fellowship of those in our community who are affected by disabilities in many different ways. So what do? We strive to enhance the understanding of awareness and resolution of challenges faced by those with disabilities. We support a lot of programs to remove barriers which impede full employment, development, and productivity. Susan talks a lot about productivity. That is a great diverse attribute of our community. We advocate for the advancement of people with disabilities in the workplace, and we work to make technology accessible. And we advocate for the advancement of those that are already employees of AT&T, but also we try to bring in outside candidates and do recruiting. We are an employer of choice, and also we bring technology accessibility outside of our organization and our company as well. And we welcome and support the caregiver of those affected by disabilities. I myself was a parent of a special needs child while being in employment at AT&T, and so I understand what it's like to care for either a special needs child or perhaps an adult, an aging adult. So how do members benefit from Ideal? Ultimately, my goal as president and my national team's goal is really to create a sense of shared purpose and fellowship. Fellowship is a big word in our organization. We're a smaller, more intimate employee resource group, and that allows us to really touch as many people as possible and help as many people as possible and share ideas. There's a lot of opportunity in our employee resource group to work for the outside community as well as the internal community. And we're really excited about serving as an ambassador of AT&T when we're out in the community. We're presenting the AT&T name in a great way, and we're very proud of our work and we're proud of our company. We're all about skill development. We love sharing ideas. We love taking those that might be in different positions within the company and show our other members some career opportunities, some development opportunities, knowledge transfer. We have a diverse population within our ERG community, and we try to take advantage of that as much as possible. And then there's also an opportunity to serve in leadership positions at the Employee Resource Group, either at the local chapter or the national level. And then one of the greatest benefits of being in an employee resource group, especially Ideal, is that we get direct one-on-one interaction with the leaders of our business and leaders of other businesses. And normally that wouldn't be something that we would have access to if we weren't part of such a great organization as the Employee Resource Group organization. So just what does Ideal do on a daily basis? And these are some of our recent accomplishments. We've grown our membership up to 2,700 members strong. We have 6 chapters around the country, and we have active members. We have engaged members. I'm all about quality, not quantity. So we're very proud of our organization. We have strengthened the scholarship program. We love to issue scholarships. We love to raise money for scholarships. We had 800 applicants for the 2014 cycle. We're just about to start our 2015 cycle, and we expect even more. I mentioned earlier about caregivers. We are largely an organization of caregivers, not just those who directly have disabilities ourselves. And so we have an organization called PACT, Parents and Caregivers Together, and we also have an organization that's exclusively about those in our organization or those caring for someone on the autism spectrum, and that's called the Puzzle Piece Employee Zone. And we're just really proud of those 2 groups, and they help our members in countless ways. Ideal Innovation. We are very innovative. Our members are very vocal about ideas about how to improve our lives at home, about how to improve our lives here at work. And we do a lot of crowdsourcing participation where we share ideas with the leaders of our business, and hopefully those result in actual material projects that help our membership and help our employee group at large. We are currently the only official AT&T corporate partner of the Alzheimer's Association. We do fundraising work with them. We hope to engage them with our big data organization to help analyze and research mutual data. We do local events where we bring in speakers, and we also have, we always have a great participation at the chapter level of seminars and speaker sessions, and they're a great partner of ours. And then Susan mentioned Cato, Corporate Accessibility Technology Office. Highly engaged with them. We do accessibility training. We do some recruiting opportunities with them. We are their guinea pig, for lack of a better word. Whenever the organization wants to come and find some people with certain kinds of disabilities and test out products and solutions, they come to Ideal, and we're really happy to be a part of that. So I am going to pass it off to Lee Mabey. He is our Director of Product Marketing Management, AT&T Mobility.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about how AT&T innovates for consumers. And I wanted to start off with AT&T's values, specifically the value of delivering the future first. So when I look at innovation and I look at the opportunity that we have for this space, one of the areas that we wanted to focus on with respect to our values is powering innovation to help solve societal challenges. Next slide, please. So to do that, I wanted to give you a more comprehensive overview. You've heard some of the demographics, but from a marketing standpoint, my team in the Emerging Consumer Markets Group is specifically focused on the customer experience and innovation pieces for this growing consumer segment. When you look at the population size of people with disabilities that's been covered, the population for those age 65 plus, and the unpaid caregiver or caregivers that do a little bit more to help someone, a loved one or a special needs child, as Heather mentioned. And you take out the overlap, it represents about 131 million people, which is almost half the U.S. population. So our work is guided by the AT&T Advisory Panel on Access and Aging, and I wanted to give you a little flavor of some of the things that we look at in terms of consumer insight, as well as how our external advisory panel has guided us on some specific projects. The chart that you're looking at right now shows the general or non-disabled population baseline and some milestones that most of us experience in life, while the purple line represents gaps that are considered challenges for people with disabilities in general. So by age 5, for children that are identified having a disability and enter into early intervention programs, about 60% of them reach age-appropriate milestones, while research suggests that 80% should be reaching age-appropriate expectations, thus meaning the behaviors of a 5-year-old would exhibit. And this represents a gap of about 200,000 children that should be reaching age-appropriate milestones but are not. Now, when you look at high school graduation, currently the non-disabled or general population has a graduation rate of about 74%, but only 64% of those enrolled in special education are either graduating high school or having a GED high school graduation equivalent, which represents over 500,000 children. Moving on to college, if you look at the population in general, 32% of the non-disabled population has a college degree age 25 and older, while only 15% of people with disabilities are attaining college degrees, which represents a gap of about 14.6 million people. And finally, the most staggering statistic is employment. When you look at the employment rate, not the unemployment rate, but the employment rate, 64% of the non-disabled population is employed, while sadly only 17% of the disability population is employed, which represents 24 million people. And I couldn't think of a more appropriate time to highlight that in October, which is National Disability Awareness Employment Month. So this represents a huge challenge. So at AT&T, when we look at three populations, we try to uncover what are the real needs and where are the opportunities for technology to help uncover and meet some of these needs. So starting from the top, for people with disabilities represents 57 million Americans. And as Susan identified, having a disability, really when you answer the question on the subset of the census survey that rates this, you have both severe disabilities and non-severe disabilities. A non-severe disability might be, using reading glasses. To a severe disability, meaning that you might be, quadriplegic and need the use of a wheelchair. That's just the classifications, how it breaks down. The top issue for people with disabilities is social inclusion, which is, I want to fully participate in society. And when we look at technology, technology ownership for people with disabilities is pretty much on line with the non-disabled population at about 56% smartphone ownership. So at AT&T, we really believe that the portfolio of products and services that we offer, both wired and wireless, has an opportunity to inspire people to use these technologies as assistive technology versus a legacy assistive technology that may cost thousands of dollars versus something that might be in your pocket or a tablet or another connected device that is cost a fraction of that. So we do a lot of work in our space, specifically with our AT&T Advisory Panel on Access and Aging, and trying to find use cases to figure out how products and services can be used for people with disabilities in ways they may not even have been designed before. Next slide, please. When we look at the aging population, specifically those Americans aged 65 and older, we really feel that there's 3 top issues that technology can address. First is social connections, specifically intergenerational connections, or say, for example, the connection between a grandfather and a grandson. Second is the need to maintain a level of independence in the home and both out of the home, as well as maintaining wellness. Interestingly, the smartphone ownership for those 65 and older is only 18%, versus the general population of about 56% and growing. So we feel that there's an opportunity for seniors to adapt smartphone and tablet ownership and broadband connectivity for the express purpose of finding new ways to connect specifically intergenerationally, either through texting or Skype, whatever it might be, as well as independence. Recently AT&T announced development efforts for a service called Digital Life Care. Digital Life is our home and automation platform, and we're retooling that service as a vertical specifically for caregivers and specifically for the aging population to equip homes with automated solutions, but also provide a discrete way for caregivers to see if there's movement in the home, if there's been activity around the refrigerator and the like. And we hope to launch that service next year. But we also have a wide portfolio of products and services that would help these people in terms of maintaining connections, wellness, as well as maintaining independence. And finally, for caregivers, as Heather alluded to, really the top issue is support. There are 66 million unpaid caregivers in the U.S. today. The average unpaid caregiver is 44 years old, female, and works. And on average, there's about a $200 a day loss in productivity for caregivers from doing, average activities from checking on prescriptions or booking doctor's appointments. But nationwide, it's about a $25.2 billion in lost productivity. So really, caregivers are just looking for support. And AT&T has a wide portfolio of products and services, everything from tracking technology to the Digital Life platform that I mentioned, that we can offer to caregivers as a means to help them in their support. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples, and this is just a small fraction of examples for how our AT&T Advisory Panel on Access and Aging has guided the development of some of these solutions. Now, our AT&T Advisory Panel on Access and Aging is an external panel of subject matter experts in the areas of disabilities, aging, and caregiving. They represent both practitioners who have hands-on experience with the population, including medical professionals, as well as teachers, people that run autism transition centers, as well as advocates. So those who may represent larger disability organizations that represent constituents fighting for legislation on behalf of the disability community. You can see the profiles of all of these people at att.com/accessibility. One of the products that our advisory panel guided us on was the AT&T Everthere solution. The AT&T Everthere solution is a mobile personal safety device that provides one-button connection to a monitored call center. It has advanced fall detection and GPS capabilities that allow people to stay on the go and remain independent, but also having the convenience and support of a professional call center, as well as GPS detection for emergency personnel when needed. Our advisory panel guided us on the development of the solution as well as the marketing initiatives to help reach the consumers. Next slide, please. Another area that our advisory panel guided us on was the AT&T UVerse Easy Remote app. UVerse is AT&T's television product, and the Easy Remote application was designed specifically for people with disabilities that gave them a few features, such as a dedicated closed caption button that turned the captioning on with one touch. It allowed people to use voice commands to search the menu for shows and movies. And it also has a high contrast mode, so people with severe visual impairments can switch over to a more high contrast view. So in closing, we feel that AT&T's broad products and services that we sell today is, to the general population as consumers, has much broader implication for both the people with disabilities, caregivers, and the aging population to adapt these new assistive technologies versus legacy technologies that may cost thousands of dollars and help close some of these gaps that were highlighted earlier and meet the needs of the consumers. So with that, thank you, and I'll turn it over to our RCR Wireless moderators.
Lee, thank you very much. I think we've all learned a lot from that. And at this time, I'd really like to follow up on the comments that you made about the low smartphone adoption rate among the aging population. I think you said 18% was the number. And I think a lot of people would really like to understand what some of the roadblocks are to seniors wanting to adopt smartphone technology, and some of the opportunities that it can afford them, not only to stay connected to loved ones and caregivers, but also to monitor their own health and wellness.
Sure, absolutely. So the aging population, today, if you predominantly look at what those age 65 and older are using today, it's what you might anticipate. They're feature phones or basic flip phones or text phones that have big buttons and keyboards and that sort of thing. And a very voice-centric audience. So there's really two barriers to adoption. Well, there's three. The first barrier is, give me a reason to believe why I need one. And so one of the things that we are working on are some education opportunities for the aging population to give them specifically a reason to believe why they would need a smartphone or a tablet. For one thing I didn't show is the tablet adoption rate is actually, a lot higher for this population because there is a direct benefit. I can read my books, I can check my email and that sort of thing. And so, one is just any good marketing reason. Give me a reason why. And specifically for us, we want to highlight, the reasons for intergenerational connection, as I talked about, as well as independence. Being able to do something without the assistance of someone else. The second barrier is education. Moving from a voice-centric environment, such as using a flip phone to a smartphone, is a huge leap. And so we have found through various trials and errors that a high-touch personal training for this particular segment is very, very beneficial. One of our other employee resource groups called Oxygen, which is more of a younger-centric employee resource group, created a program called The Bridge. And The Bridge was where AT&T employees acted as volunteers. They went into the community, setting up appointments at churches, senior centers, and that sort of thing, just to train seniors on the basic uses of a smartphone. How to send a text message, how to take a picture, how to download an app, and that sort of thing. And after that, and again, we went in with the goal of education and not selling, but after that, after a few of these sessions, it was advised that we needed to bring our business cards, and the retailers needed to tell these people where they worked because we were having a lot of people come into the stores and adopt. The third thing is obviously price, and price is a concern, specifically for a population that may have a fixed income. And as you know, it's no secret we're in a price war with all of our major competitors, so price continues to come down, and we feel that trend will continue in making adoption only increase. So looking at the reasons to believe, education opportunities, as well as price, we feel that trend will go north pretty quickly.
I would think so. And Heather, I'd like to hear from you as well. I know that you work a lot with caregivers in the support groups, and that mobile technology can be a huge benefit to keeping caregivers connected not only to their loved ones but also to one another. And yet, one thing caregivers never have enough of is time, and finding that time to learn how to use all that the smartphones have to offer. Do you find that training on technology is one of the benefits that the caregivers can offer each other and that the employee resource groups can offer to other people?
Yes, actually. So it's interesting that Lee mentioned the Bridge program because IDEAL is working on duplicating that in a similar scenario to not only the disabled community but also the caregiver community, where we're making sure the caregivers know what technology is available to them. We also spoke about the more traditional technologies that many caregivers are used to, especially those caring for a special needs child, that are very expensive, and some are not always aware of the application-based accessibility offerings on a simple tablet or smartphone. And so that is something that we're working on bringing out to the community ourselves. I mentioned my presentation. We've got a great couple of groups, one called Packed Parents and Caregivers Together, and then the other one, the Puzzle Piece Employee Zone. This is a group of people who consider themselves autism warriors, and they have embedded themselves in the technology available to help support their children or their adult children who may be on the spectrum, or even if they're on the spectrum themselves. And so we do a lot of cross-information, sharing of articles, sharing of items, sharing of seminars and speakers to make sure that that information is disseminated, as widely as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then either of you, Lee or Heather or Susan, I think that digital life is going to be more and more important to this community. And I know that a lot is coming next year, and that you can't talk about everything that's coming, but is there anything that you can share with us about some of the benefits that the digital life solutions are going to bring to these communities, both the caregivers and the different disabled communities?
Well, this is Lee. I can speak to that. So Digital Life, as I mentioned before, is our home automation and security system. And one of the benefits of that platform is it allows you to add devices to it and create programs that really create some ideal environments for caregivers as well as people with disabilities just to navigate their home. And I'll give you a practical example. I use Digital Life today. I am a parent like Heather with a child with disabilities, both mental and physical. And for her, one of the challenges she has is toileting at night. So I use Digital Life to help her with that process by, turning off her white noise machine in her room, turning on a TV to run a video to prompt her to get out of bed, unlock her door, and turn the lights on in the bathroom to, navigate down the hall. And then while she's in the midst of, doing the duty, so to speak, the lights flicker on just to let her know that it's time to wrap things up, and then come back to her room where Digital Life turns off the lights, locks her room, turns her white noises back on, and turns the TV back off. And so it helps me as a caregiver not to have to get up with her at night and to facilitate that, that process, but gives her that level of independence. I see someone also posted under the home automation is their capability to activate a video monitoring when an abnormal condition arises, specifically when an elderly person falls. So with the extensible devices that Digital Life comes with, you can say put a motion sensor, in one of the examples where we have launched or announced Digital Life Care, put a motion sensor, say, under a bed. And so when someone gets out of bed, say, at night, and say walks to the home, that might be an abnormal condition. And you can set rules to say, if something funky happens, say at night or whatever it might be, go ahead and write a program to alert me when something goes on. Or if there's motion, we have cameras that will automatically record when motion goes on. So you're really limited to your imagination about how you can use automation controls and programs to both create an environment for your loved one. Another example, since the wireless technology, is putting contact sensors on a refrigerator. Typically we use those for a window to announce that the window's been open or closed, but you can put contact sensors on a refrigerator, and as a caregiver, monitor if the refrigerator's been opened or closed for a period of time, and if it hasn't, say like in a day or so or in a specific time period, to announce to a caregiver, hey, there hasn't been activity in the home. So it really is an extensible platform, and so with the Digital Life Care, the the thinking is to offer a set of out-of-the-box solutions and a simplified interface for caregivers that will allow them to do some basic in-home monitoring for a loved one and modify the home to allow the loved one to stay in their home for a period of time under the care of someone remotely rather than going to an assisted living facility.
And
That's
this
amazing.
as a person with a disability, as the home products and appliances become more and more connected, you're given the option of using a commercially available product rather than buying a specialized product, which tends to be much, much more expensive. So as a blind person, I can tell, for example, if there's a leak in my basement, or if there's, as the products and services become more connected, I would have the ability to purchase and access all the features that would go with a specialized stove or refrigerator, set temperatures, things that today are done often by guess and by golly, or by purchasing something that's very, very expensive that's designed specifically for a blind person or another disability. Environmental controls that did lights and those types of things, heating, things that are available today, used to cost tens of thousands of dollars for someone who is paraplegic or quadriplegic. But now, through the mobile devices and through the more accessibility that's available, people can use commercially offered products and services, and it is so much cheaper. You don't need specialized repair people. You don't need anything special. You just live your life like everybody else, and there's an incredible freedom with that as well.
And Susan, do you think awareness is building among people who can take advantage of this, that they can access this through mobile devices instead of spending so much on special solutions?
Well, I would say definitely in the blind and deaf communities, it's definitely, I mean, if you go through a room of people who are blind and ask how many of them use smartphones, a huge percentage. And that's not what you would think with touch screens. But it's because the value is there. With my smartphone today, I can read a book, I can scan a bottle of pills and find out what I'm supposed to be taking and what the amount is. I can identify colors of clothing, I can identify bills. I mean, things that you used to buy, you used to pay $100 for a color identifier, or you'd pay $150 for a bill identifier. And all these things are built into these devices, and they're with you all the time. If you get lost, there's a device that can tell you how to get where you need to go. And these are all things that, because of the accessibility that's built in, because of awareness on the part of those who develop the devices and awareness on the part of service providers like AT&T, they're built in, and you can use them, and it just makes life so much easier and better. So in the communities of connected people, they're talking to each other. I think that the work that Heather and Lee are doing and other folks within AT&T to make awareness in caregiver populations and in parents, I think you'll see a much higher adoption rate as people understand the value.
Right. I think that's key is getting the word out to the caregivers as well, because there's some people who may not be able to advocate for themselves as quickly as others. So
exactly,
it seems like it's different parts of a puzzle. Well, we are running low on time, but I would like to go back to each of you one more time for any closing comments or to sum up anything or revisit any points that you may have made and want to make sure we understand. And then, Susan, I will start with you, Susan Messru, Director of Global Public Policy for AT&T Services.
And I would say that there are very strong business reasons to develop and offer products and services that are accessible. But more than that, it's the right thing to do. It's something that we're all going to need as we age. And if we work together now in both developing these products and services and getting the word out, we're just going to have so many more opportunities available to us.
Yeah, I have to interrupt you. It's such a good point that you make, is that we are all going to need these products as we age. So we all have something at stake, right?
Yeah.
Heather Sadler, Sales Manager for Mobility Acquisition at AT&T Mobility. Thank you very much for being here. Do you have anything to share in closing?
Sure, I do. I'm very proud and I'm really excited to be a part of my organization, my employee resource group, but I'm also very proud to kind of be a part of this sort of awakening in Genesis that AT&T is sort of leading us down, which is the value of recognizing that we need a diverse population, a diverse workforce. It's good business internally that, those with disabilities, those that have diverse attributes are smart business, they're loyal employees, they're intelligent employees, and we're working really hard to develop internally those employees as well as recruit fantastic people from the outside. And this is something that grows in an initiative that grows exponentially every year within our company, and very happy to be a part of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And Lee Mabey, Director of Mobility Product Marketing at AT&T Mobility. Thanks very much for everything that you had shared today. Do you have anything in closing?
Sure. Unlike Heather, I'm very proud to be part of a company that is including people with disabilities, the aging segment, and caregivers as part of the design. One of the areas that AT&T has recently moved into is the connected car. And one of the patents that we hold is a steering wheel that will vibrate to alert somebody where they need to make a turn. And in visiting with these people, a couple of weeks ago, we highlighted the disability benefits of that particular application, specifically someone who might be deaf, who can't hear the GPS audibly, and using that vibration as a haptic cue to let them know when they turn. So all that to say is, looking at the consumer technology that we have in place today, just looking at it and using it in a new and different way can provide some huge benefits for the disability community, as well as the other communities that we talked about, to help them maintain independence as well as for full social inclusion.
Absolutely. Consumer technology is taking over a lot of what the specialized technologies used to. Well, thank you all very much for being here. This has been the AT&T Access and Inclusion webinar. Thank you all for joining us today.